All right, so we'll let people jump on here, Bobbie. So we'll wait a minute or two and let people jump
Okay,
in.
that'll be fine.
Looks beautiful out there.
Oh, it is. Trust me. Even got a few ducks on the water.
Yeah, it looks nice.
Probably get a better picture if you get on the end of the sun and hit you in the face.
Am I lit enough, or do I need to turn toward the sun?
No, you look good. You're fine. Yep.
Okay, great.
All right, so I guess we'll get started. Why don't you go ahead and tell everyone who you are and kind of, where you grew up. Like, let's learn a little bit about you. Where's Bobbie from, and what are you all about?
Well, my name is Bobbie, and I'm from Oklahoma originally. I moved to Tennessee and with a GM and wound up married to a Tennessee fella. So I live in Tennessee now, and I really love it here. It's beautiful, as you can see in the background. This is my local park. It's just about 3/4 of a mile from my house. I don't get signal for the internet at my house because we're way out in the country. So I had to move. I had to come here. Um, what do you want to know about me?
I mean, that's a good start. So you're in Tennessee now. Um,
Yes.
tell us about where you first met Joe. Where did you meet Joe? How did you get involved with Joe?
Well, I had no idea who Joe was, and I got this friend of mine who came over from across the street, and she said, "Hey, there's this guy named Joe Exotic, and he's looking for you." And I'm like, "What?" It sounded really crazy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So finally, she convinced me that this was for real, and I called, and they said that I was a dead ringer for Carol Baskin. Now, granted, this was 7 years ago, so it's been a while.
Mm-hmm.
I've aged quite a bit since then. Um, so anyway, I went down to the zoo. I'd seen the signs on the interstate for years, actually, and I went down there. And my first introduction, I walked into the office there, and I said, and they said, "Don't tell us, you're the Carol lookalike." So um, I went in, and they called Joe, and he came in, and he was just as sweet and as polite to me as he could be. He said, "Now we're fixing to get ready here." He said, "I want you to wear some clothes that we've picked out for you." And he picked out that awful outfit that I wore in the car dealership scene, and it didn't match. And I was kind of concerned about that because I'm a real matchy kind of person. And they they had me put that on, and then they gave me this real big, uh, like daisy or sunflower headpiece, and I put that on, and they said that's good, and I was just like, okay. And we drove to the car dealership with
Mm-hmm.
a camera crew, and Joe started to tell me what he wanted me to do, and he kind of gave me carte blanche to do pretty much what I wanted, but I tried to make it look real good. I went along a couple of cars, and then I went into that nice convertible, and he had given me a wad of money, and I mean it was a big wad of money. Well, it was mostly ones, but hundreds on the outside. Anyway, we filmed that scene, and he sang quite a bit. And then when that part was over, we loaded up and we went back to the zoo. And I'm telling you what, I have never seen such a well-run zoo, even at the Oklahoma City Zoo, and it's good. And I've been to a lot of different zoos. I used to live in California, and I've been all over the U.S. So um, it was interesting to see the way he had his cats, and he had many other animals too. but we began filming one episode, of the video where I was feeding the tigers, and of course, he was singing too. And then we did the part with the septic tank where I was dumping the remains in the septic tank.
Mm-hmm.
And they had some police officers there. I guess they were just fake kind of police officers. They weren't real. And it was just fun. It was really fun. We had a lot of laughs, and there were some people there that I had no idea who were. And I met a woman by the name of Ronnie,
Mm-hmm.
who really impressed me. Well, I think I talked to her on the phone that time. Anyway, everything was really nice. All the people were really wonderful at the zoo. But what really impressed me most was not that trip. I got paid a little bit for it, and I needed it. So, that was good.
How much did you get paid? Can you tell us how much you got paid? Do you remember?
$300.
$300. Okay.
Yes. And my husband and I at the time, we were living in Lindsey, Oklahoma. But shortly thereafter, we moved to Tennessee again.
Mm-hmm.
And we spent about 8 years in Oklahoma, and then moved back to where he's from. I fell in love with Tennessee when I met him, and it's so beautiful. The trees are so big here, where in Oklahoma they're real short and scrubby, kind of, in the area that I lived in. It went to central Oklahoma. It's really beautiful, but it's a dry, beautiful. Where here it's really wet.
Mm-hmm. So how did Joe find you? You said Joe found you. Did he see you? Like, did he find you on online, or how did he pick you out and say, okay, that woman looks like Carol Baskin?
Well, their feud had been going on for a long time. And I believe somebody showed him a picture of me, said, wow, she looks like Carol Baskin. You got to see this lady. And so he started trying to find me. And, we went through several different people. And then finally my best friend, who her name is Tiffany Downs, she came across the street and told me about this. And I was just like, oh, yeah, right. I didn't really believe it. And it got interesting real quick. Hold on just a second.
Sure.
Bill? Okay, I'm back. I have my little dog out here, and he's greeting another animal.
No worries. No worries.
Okay. Well, anyway, I guess it took about 2 months for Joe to find me. I'm not exactly sure, but something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And when I called, he was just like, oh, great, and he wanted me to come right away. So I came as soon as I could. And I had been around Wynnewood, which is where the zoo is. I had been there off and on growing up from the 5th grade on. And of course, by that time I was well into my 50s. And I couldn't believe that I looked like anybody, really. But evidently, the way she looks and the way I looked at that time were so similar that my own mother saw a picture of her in the front page of the Oklahoma City paper and thought it was me.
Wow. Okay.
And she called me to say, why are you on the Oklahoma City paper? And I said, I'm not. And she said, well, I got a picture of you right here. I said, oh, it's Carol. And I've never met Carol. I don't know anything about her other than what I've been told. And, things like that, you never know for sure,
Exactly.
if it's that much of a match or, but it turned out, I guess I did look a lot like her.
Do you ride a bike around town like Carol does?
I can ride a bike, but right now I don't have one. We moved out into a really rural area of Tennessee, and so it's not really a good way to get around out in the country.
So I think
go ahead.
One of the interesting things that you said, Bobbie, that I'd like to hear more about is when you first got onto the Joe's property, onto the zoo, and got to see his animals. You said it was one of the most well-run zoos that you've ever seen. Tell us about your experience there. I mean, what did you see out of that zoo that gave you a clue that, hey, this is a really good environment for these animals? Is that what you're saying? It was a good environment?
Yes. And I was very, very excited to go, to see what was there. And at first I only saw just a little portion of it, while we were doing all the traveling and the filming and everything. But my husband had a 5 bypass, and we went back to Oklahoma, and we stayed there in one of Joe's trailers when she has he had cabins and he had trailers. And when he realized, that my husband was sick, or he was just recovering from being sick, he got us in a real nice trailer. And when we got there, of course, there's the front parking lot, and then there's the side parking lot. And the side parking lot has beautiful bamboo all up and down it. It's just gorgeous. And then he's got it fenced in. Well, as soon as you go in, there's a little play area for kids. And then you went into the office, and the office was, it was set up to where you had to come through the office to go onto the property. And so when I walked out of that door, it was really just a beautiful environment. He had stands for the fans, and he gave a little show for them when they first got there. And he would bring a tiger or two out and talk to them about that. And then, as you go back, you can see these large, airy cages with the animals in them. And they are such beautiful animals. I mean, they're just absolutely gorgeous. Sorry, my hair's sticking to me.
Oh, you're fine. Yeah.
It's quite warm here today.
It's hot. It's almost 90 degrees in Pennsylvania today. So, yeah.
Oh, goodness gracious. Yep. Well, I don't know what the temperature is exactly, but it's quite warm. When I walked in and I saw the tiger cages, my first impression was, why are they not in cages? Because these cages are absolutely huge. And the tigers were just running and playing and having a really great time. And I got to see one tiger that was a cross between, can't remember if it was a lion and a tiger, or a tiger, a female lion and a male tiger, or the other way around. But he was huge. He was so tall. I couldn't believe it was a tiger. It looked more like a cow or maybe even a horse. A small horse. But that one was just like a marvel. They said that his genetics were such that he didn't have an off switch for his growth because of the mix. Well, the other way, if you do it the other, male to female ratio, then the cubs grow to pretty much regular size. Whereas this one, and I think his name was Hercules, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, he was so enormous, you knew something was going on. And Joe told me, he says, I think that working with the University of Colorado, of course, he was trying to backbreed toward the saber-tooths, if that makes any sense.
That's interesting. I didn't know that. So you're saying he was trying to rebirth, if you will, a saber-toothed tiger? Is that it?
Well, he was trying to backbreed toward that direction.
Okay.
And I don't think he would have ever gotten an actually saber-tooth or anything. But he did make different combinations of animals to where he lost the stripes out of the tigers, and different things, different genetic fulfillment that he was after based on his work with the university.
Okay.
And it was really amazing to me, and I don't even pretend to know all the stuff about that because I'm no geneticist, but it was fascinating. And he would go up to Colorado on regular trips and take information that he had, and they would do blood samples and this, that, and the other to find out exactly where in the backbreeding they were. So I was getting in on watching all this stuff. And I got to hold, at the time, the rarest cat on earth, which was a low liger. It was 2 lions and a tiger. And I mean, the back breeding for generations. And you have to raise a tiger and a lion together in order to get a breeding pair.
Okay.
They normally will not co-breed. But with raising them together, Joe had found a way. And he had a nursery, and all the little ones went to the nursery, and he would bottle feed them every day and play with them. And I mean, he loved his tigers. I mean, with a very intense love. I think he loved the cats more than people, except for Travis. That was his husband.
Yep.
And he wrote love songs to Travis and featured him in many of his videos, which I'm sure you probably know about that.
Yeah. So what do you think? So he had 2 husbands, Travis and John. So you're saying, like, you think he really had a really soft spot for Travis. Travis was the special one, and
I never met the other guy.
okay.
I only met Travis. Well, I bumped into Travis. It wasn't like we had a real deep conversation or anything. Travis was very quiet. I mean, I'm sure he could really break loose and have fun. I've seen some of the video, but around me, he was very quiet and very reserved. And I only saw him for just a few minutes, that's all. But the thing that impressed me the most, I think, about Travis was the fact that he was almost the leader in their relationship. Anything he wanted to do, Joe was for. It was just a really intense love affair. And you could tell, which I didn't know Joe's past. I didn't know about the multiple marriage or that. Well, I knew he was gay. He told me that right off the bat.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd had a few gay friends, it's just something that, nowadays you pretty much have to just accept. And
Sure.
And I wasn't used to it. So, I'm a very Christian type woman, and I don't seek out friendships with gays, but I've had some really great friendships with gays. They just happen to be that way, And I didn't have any problem with it. So when I saw them together, you could tell there was a very deep, deep feeling. And I think a lot of what was done at the zoo after Travis died was Joe's way of just falling apart, literally falling apart. I think that losing the love of his life was very hard on him. And I think he kind of lost it for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't blame him. I mean, if I lost my love of my life, I would probably go a little nuts too, wouldn't you?
Do you think that's what set him over the edge and put all this stuff in motion? I mean, tell us about the documentary. Did you get to watch the documentary, and what are your thoughts on that?
I didn't get to watch it. To this day, I have not seen it. I lived part of it, being there around the zoo. I got to get back to the cats in a minute, but the zoo was just, I don't know, it just had an air of peace and love, and I felt like after Joe lost Travis, nothing was the same. It was more chaotic. Things that he really depended upon and really thought were important didn't mean as much. And I think that's part of the reason why those 5 tigers got shot. He shot them. They were not any of them that he had raised, and they were giving him trouble. And I guess he just decided to get rid of them so that he could get the new ones that were coming in, because he didn't have a new cage for them, you know. But he had people who were building cages all over the place. The wilder animals that he rescued were more in the back. They weren't up front where, you know, everybody could have a more interaction with them. I know that the ones I fed, one of them was tame and one of them was not. And the one that wasn't was a lion, actually. And it was kind of scary a little bit. But, you know, he assured me that I was well protected and he couldn't get through the cage and everything.
So you're saying, so you said something interesting there that I want people to rehear again. So Joe did take 5 tigers and take them out back or what have you and shoot them.
Yes, he did.
Wow.
I'm sure they were giving him trouble because, well, that and the fact that, you know, with Travis gone, he wasn't the same man. You know, he was hurt so deeply. I think a lot of the things he did after Travis's death just really were not Joe like I knew Joe.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed Joe's company, and I really never took his threats against Carol for real. I think it was more in a teasing, joking manner. But after Travis's death, I think he kind of blamed Carol for all the stress and too. Carol did something that really, really was hard for me to deal with. She went after his mother and his father, and they were both in their 80s and ill. And Joe had transferred the zoo over to them at one point, and even after that point was over, Carol still went after him to get her $1 million judgment when she spent $2.5 million trying to get.
Yeah.
Now, you know, that to me sounds pretty ridiculous. Just spend $2.5 million to get $1 million. You know, I'm not rich. I've never been rich, but that sounds ridiculous.
And one of the interesting things is we all know that Carol's husband or ex-husband Don went missing, and she spent $2.5 million to go after Joe. Why do you think she didn't use that money to try to find her husband?
Because I think she knows where he's at. Hold on just a second. I've lost my earbud.
That's okay.
I think Carol knows full well where her husband is, what's going on with him, and whether he was pushed out of an airplane over the Gulf of Mexico or whether he ran off to Argentina. Those are pretty far-fetched. But, you know, down in Florida, there are alligators that eat people all the time.
Yeah.
And I know that on the night that Don supposedly went missing, Carol made a call to her son and her daughter. And I imagine they helped her clean up the mess, you know, take care of everything. I don't know that for sure. I wouldn't misrepresent myself saying that, but it just sounds too convenient. And to have cats that will eat bone, flesh, any kind of meat they can get, you know.
Little bit of sardine oil, right? That's all it takes.
I don't even think it needed sardine oil. Joe, of course, had a contract to pick up all the wasted meat from Walmart and several other grocery stores in the area to feed his tigers and the other animals. And he got fruit and stuff like that too. So, you know, there was a whole lot of networking that went on for Joe to run the zoo. And now back to the cats, which is really what I'd like to talk about.
Sure.
The areas were so large, and he had little jungle gyms for them and stuff. And he would have his tours go through, and they would get to see all this. And they had, safety barriers and then the cage itself, but only the wilder tigers were in cages that look like cages. They may be 20 by 20 and, have a little cage for them to feed in. And while they were feeding, then the employees would clean the area for the tigers and what have you.
Mm-hmm.
And he even had bears and birds. And I mean, he had skunks even. He had all kinds of different animals. It was a real zoo experience, but he had at one time, I think, 139 cats, whether lions, tigers, mixes,
Mm-hmm.
and the information that he was giving, to the university, of course, was helping with all of this. And, it was his motivation for the interbreeding and stuff like that. When she was trying to find a way to have a healthier, hardier cat that would be able to live in, nature. And the only way that was going to happen was if man intervened. So
so when you visited the zoo, obviously you got to see a lot that was going on with the tigers. You got to see their cages and everything. What was the vibe like from the employees? Did you get to have any interaction with any of the employees that worked with Joe on a day-to-day basis outside of Travis? I know you said, you talked with Travis a little bit. What did you get to meet Saf? So Saf's a very popular person.
No, I didn't. I'm not exactly sure when the injury was, but I think that might have been around the same time. I know there was an explosion, and he thought it was the animal rights people that had been bugging him, trying to get into the zoo and trying to become employees and stuff. And he thinks that they're the ones who bombed his both his recording studio and his alligator habitat,
Mm-hmm.
reptiles. Now, I don't know much about that, but I know it totally destroyed the studio, and he had rebuilt by the time I got there. I saw a few of the employees. I don't know their names. I know they had a barn out back where they prepared the foods and, cut everything up, peeled it if it needed to be peeled, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
And then when they fed them, they had little cages on the side where they'd feed them that were attached, and they would close the gates, and then they could go in and clean and anything else that needed to be done. Well, Joe also had to take the babies sometimes away from their mothers because mother cats are very big animals, and if they lay down on one of their babies, it could kill it. So in an effort to keep more tigers alive, he would take the babies. He would take them and, like I said, take them to the nursery, and he would take care of them. They were in his house. He literally lived the whole life of tigers and had a lot of fun doing it.
So did you get a sense when you met some of these employees, when you came across, that they were happy working for Joe?
Yes. Everyone I could think of. I mean, there were a few that, he had to get on to because they didn't want to work much, but that's any place, any group of people. You'll always have a few bad apples, but most of the people seemed to be very happy, and they were enjoying what they were doing. And he had trailers on site for them to live in, and he would provide food sometimes. And they said sometimes in the wintertime, when things were tough at the zoo and they didn't have very many people coming in, they might not get paid, but he would always make sure they had food. And then, of course, he paid the bills, the electric and the water, whatever. I don't know exactly what all the bills were.
Sure.
But those people could live there for free virtually. And where else can you live somewhere and your rent just be feeding these wonderful animals? And I'm sure there were a few that gave them trouble, that's to be expected. But mostly, I would say everybody who worked there was pretty well, you know, enjoyed their jobs. I don't know how it was after Travis's death. I
Mhm.
think that messed up a whole lot of them.
So this might be an awkward question, but it kind of leads into the trailers. So I know you haven't seen the documentary, so I hope I'm not coming out of left field when I ask you this question. So just please bear with me, but I have to ask it.
Okay.
You know, part of the documentary said that there was a trailer that was kind of dedicated to, let's just say, shenanigans after the office hours were closed, and there were some crazy things that went on in those trailers with the employees. So I'm just kind of curious, is that true or is that not true? And I hope you understand what I'm getting at when I ask you that question.
Oh,
I'm
yeah, I
trying to be as
understand.
appropriate as possible.
I had no idea about stuff like that. I came in and I stayed in one of the trailers. It wasn't one that anything was going on in. It was just me and my husband, and and then he brought me a lowlighter to pet on, and that was amazing. I mean, amazing. I had held a couple of cats and petted on them, and you know, I have to say, Carol says petting is wrong and all this stuff. Petting the cats changed me from a skeptic about cats to really a cat lover.
Okay.
Those babies were so lovable and sweet, and none of them had uh, bowel problems and stuff like she said. None of them did that. They were playing with toys. He had all kinds of stuffed toys for them, and little things for them to chew on, and things that were approved. And he took very, very good care of his cats. I was very pleased that he could take such good care of them on the shoestring budget that he had. Because there were a lot of times that, like in the winters, like I said, that
Sure.
things were really tight. And I know Joe did whatever it took. His personality was so flamboyant. He could go into these wrestling matches and come out, and everybody would be excited that he was there, and they would talk to him, and of course then they would come and see the zoo, and people were coming from all over to see this zoo. It was
So
really an amazing thing.
when you say wrestling matches, do you mean Joe would attend like local wrestling matches, like amateur wrestling matches?
Yeah, WWF type things on,
Okay.
at a local level, and he did whatever it took to earn the money to get his animals taken care of. That was the number one concern. Um, yes, he took care of his employees, but like I said, he loved those cats, and he wouldn't kill a cat unless he really needed to, I'm sure. So when he killed those five, I really truly believe that they had to have been giving him a lot of trouble before he would ever even consider it. And
Trouble as in,
he wore a gun everywhere he went, because of the cats. He was prepared that if one got out, he was ready to kill it rather than have it threaten any of the people that were around the zoo.
so you believe that the five cats, just for clarification, because I don't know if we clarified it earlier, the five cats that he did in fact shoot, you believe they were dangerous to other people?
Oh, yes, definitely. And they weren't any that he had raised himself. They were ones that were too wild for people, and they had to be rescued. And Joe went and picked them up and rescued them, and he would make sure that they were healthy and vet cared for. I mean, it's not like he would just lose all of his investment for no reason. I
Right.
really believe that it had to have been something that he felt like was very important to do. And I know he had other rescues coming in at different points in time that maybe wouldn't have been as dangerous or as risky to, the people.
When you were on there at all, were you involved at all with this? Like, did you get to meet Jeff and Jeff and in all of this? Did you know?
And Reiki, what's uh, yeah, I met several of them as Joe's, guest, and Joe took me around just about everywhere. Um, and he made sure that I had a wonderful time.
Mhm.
He has a tremendous amount of women followers of a certain age, if you get my drift. He
You're cutting out on us, Bobbie.
get along uh, mm, of signal. I don't know. Anyway, getting back to the cats,
That's better. Yeah.
you could see them run, play. Uh, you've probably seen him feeding the Hercules or whatever his name was. I mean, he was enormous, and he would stand up 14, 15 feet high, when he would reach for his meat. And Joe just absolutely would play with him and have the best time. But all the animals in the zoo were cared for magnificently. I really felt like it was the best place I'd ever been to as far as
Wow.
the zoo.
That's high praise.
It
That's
was more
high
like
praise.
a backyard situation.
So let me ask you this: do you think that Joe should be in jail? Do you think that his crimes fit the punishment, if you will?
I think they're a little rough on him. Yes, maybe he should be in jail for a short time, sending somebody down to Florida. I don't really think, well, the Joe I knew before Travis
Mm-hmm.
had died, he joked about it a lot, that Carol needed to just be wiped off the face of the earth would be better without her and stuff like that. And he hated the fact because in her 5 or 10 year plan, something like that, she was wanting to just have stuffed tigers and let all of the big cats be extinct. So he wanted to have the big cats. He wanted to really, improve the breeds and stuff. And he wasn't one to get rid of the cats. I mean, that's not what he was about. Um, Whereas Carol had made comments about having a museum where you could come in and you could see the stuffed animals, but they would be all gone. So she'd have kind of like a corner on the market.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I took from all of it. And of course I looked up her site and things like that, but I just really, excuse me.
No, you're fine.
uh,
It's okay.
There's a lot going on around here. As you can tell, you can probably hear the speedboats running on the lake, and
Yep.
The area where we came where there was nobody is now getting pretty crowded.
Everybody's tired of being cooped up inside, right? I don't know where it's like where you're at, but
Absolutely.
in Pennsylvania,
But tell me, do you really? Go ahead.
In Pennsylvania, we're under strict order. We're basically on house arrest, if you will, where we can only go out for emergency, grocery stores and beer shopping. That's about all we can do.
Well, here we're not as tight. We only have 9 cases in my county.
Okay.
So that gives you an idea. So we're a lot less regimented than on the East Coast. And in Tennessee, I think total, the whole state, we have like 16,699 cases at this point, and only 289 maybe have died.
Okay.
So we're a little bit looser here, not having the dense population. And of course, coming to the lake to do this interview was a treat for me because I don't come down here all the time. I do now and then,
Mm-hmm.
but it's such a beautiful day. I guess everybody wanted to get out. There's 3 or 4 tents out here, and trucks with boats behind them, and a lot of boats out on the water. And yeah, so it's real interesting here.
Well, that's great. Let me ask you another question. So, you had mentioned that you had checked out Carol's website and you got a little bit of a feeling for what she was about, but you never actually visited her zoo, correct? Or her sanctuary,
Right.
as she likes to call it.
Right. I did go down to Florida, but I didn't have a good feeling about Carol. You know, she's all about making money, making money, making money. And, you know, she doesn't even pay her volunteers and interns and stuff. And I don't know how she can run like that.
They get different
know,
colored T-shirts, though. They get cool T-shirts for
oh,
volunteering.
wow.
Different levels, right? You start out at
Big
one
deal.
level, you get a certain color, and you gain rank. But I guess she doesn't feel the need to pay you. You just get a T-shirt.
Yeah, she has really tiny little cages made of wire, and Joe's standards that he had to meet were so much higher than the ones Carol has to meet. And I don't know how that happens. I know it's probably a different inspector, but they had to make sure that the state, you know, controlled how these cats were kept, since they were going to be displayed for the public. And Carol didn't have near the situation like Joe had. I was really surprised when I saw her cats' cages that she was allowed to have a zoo at all.
So you believe that the cats and the animals under Joe's zoo were better taken care of probably than the ones that were being taken care of by Carol?
Hands down,
Wow.
no comparison.
Okay.
Joe's cages were always clean and they were huge. And even the other animals, you know, the things that weren't as big a draw as the cats, they were just, the animals were happy. I don't know any other way to say it. They were content. They didn't act like, you know, where they were pacing back and forth around, or, you know, around their borders or anything like that. The birds were chirping happily. And oh, the thing that really sealed me as a cat lover, when my husband and I were staying in the trailers there at the zoo, and it got nighttime, or, you know, close to nighttime, the tigers and lions were kind of roaring back and forth to each other, and they're lowing. And it was so amazing and comforting. And it was just amazing. My husband said it was scary, but I didn't think it was scary at all.
Huh.
And then in the morning, when we woke up to all these, you know, happy singing, and, you know, and the tigers, you know, waking up and saying hi to each other. You know, it was just a very pleasant experience, and it just sealed it for me. If I could go to bed every night listening to tigers and lions low, I would do it. I mean, it's just amazing.
When you were there, so you filmed the music video with Joe, obviously.
Yes.
The people just joining. So this is Bobbie. She was in the Here Kitty Kitty video with Joe. Did you hear Joe sing at all? Because it's a question of whether or not Joe was actually singing in his videos. Is that?
Oh, yes, he's really singing. He has a beautiful voice. He used to be in choir before he was a law official down in Texas. He was in the choir, and he was having a really great time singing. And he became kind of a standout. His voice was just like an angel. And of course, some of the things that he wrote were very impressive and very conservative minded, like 96 Elephants. Oh my God, that's my favorite song in the whole wide world. You know, you'd think Here Kitty Kitty, but that's only number 2. But the 96 Elephants, it pulled at my heartstrings in a way that nothing else has ever done.
So that is his voice. So when we're listening,
to
music, that's his voice.
Yes.
Okay, because that's actually contested. You know, that's kind of the news out there, is that Joe really wasn't singing. That wasn't his voice. He had a different writer. He had somebody else that was actually doing the vocals, and he was just kind of if you remember Manili, what is it?
Milli Vanilli.
Yeah. He was
no,
one of those.
that's not.
That's one of those
it.
ones. So you're saying that's not true? That's his voice?
No, that is actually Joe's voice. He sang live on the Kitty Kitty video, and he was just very impressive. And I've listened to many of his songs. I haven't heard everything. I really wish I had an album of him that I could play or something, maybe a tape or something, CD, whatever. I'm from the record album generation.
Okay.
So, and I will really, I'll look it up every now and then and listen to a few of these songs on my, phone. But all of the things that he sang were so heartfelt, and especially how he felt about Travis by listening to the ones he sung about Travis. I mean, there's an adoration there that you just can't question. So Travis, even though he's no longer there, he was well loved, very well loved by Joe. Not to take anything away from Dylan Passage. I don't know how that relationship is. I haven't been around him. I intend to write Joe now that I know he can be talked to, written to in the prison system. I hope, though, that Trump will, at least reduce his sentence, somehow, or let him go with time served. Because Joe inside is very decent, and he takes care of his mom, or he took care of his mom and dad, and maybe his brothers and sisters weren't as involved, but Joe was just very responsible, and he would do whatever it took. I think the running for president was really hilarious.
I was going to ask you about that. I was going to ask you what you think about Joe. Was he serious? Was he this was serious to him? He thought, I'm running for president and that's what I'm going to do.
Well, I don't think he ever expected to win. No. But I think he was more or less just trying to get the type of people, that are disenfranchised to look at, there are other options besides just, Hillary Clinton and Trump.
Sure.
He liked Trump a lot. In fact, him and Trump met, and they traded some goodies that they, gave away, and like bumper stickers, hats, things like that.
Really? Were you there? Were you present for that meeting? Did you see how that meeting went, or did you just hear feedback from Joe that he had met Trump?
Well, a lot of it was feedback from Joe because I was not there.
Okay.
But I heard Trump say some things, and that impressed me. Trump enjoyed his company, and they did talk for a while. So, it's not like Joe intended to be governor of Oklahoma either when he ran for that.
Right.
He was just more or less allowing people to think deeper. And I think he did that for a long time. He wanted people.
You just cut out on us for a second here. Hang tight, Bobbie. You just cut out on us for a second. Try to talk again. There you go. I think you're back on.
Oh, okay.
Yep, you're good. Sorry, you cut out. You cut out for a second. It's probably the speedboats whizzing past you there.
Well, no, actually, there weren't any. I think we just maybe had a glitch. I'm moving at this point. I'm going to a different area. There's a family that wants to use that picnic table, I think.
Oh, okay.
But this is just such a beautiful park, and it reminds me a lot of Joe's zoo because it's open, it's very pretty and green, and I was amazed that he got so much bamboo to grow out there and so thick and gorgeous. It just really made the cages pop, and with the orange color of the tigers and everything, it was a very glorious situation.
So you never, I know I asked earlier, but you kind of cut out when I asked this question before. So I just want to ask,
okay.
Did you ever meet Jeff Lowe at all? And
no.
Okay.
No. I heard about him, but I didn't hang around a lot because I moved to Tennessee. And when I would go back, I would kind of catch up, or I would watch his podcasts, which I really enjoyed those. And I imagine they're still on, they're still there if somebody wanted to look up Joe Exotic and then watch those podcasts from the zoo. Now, I don't know when they stopped or anything like that because I kind of got out of it. I wasn't involved as much. And then when this Tiger King documentary came out, of course, I was hearing about it from everywhere. I'm not an attention seeker or anything, but, I thought, well, Joe is really, he's become something of a superstar.
Right.
And that's what Joe always wanted, I think, and somewhere deep down in his mind, for him to become this great superstar who was so into the conservation of animals that he would impress other people to want to do the same kind of things. And at one time, I actually wanted to get one of the exotic animals and raise it. But I like goats and stuff too, so it wouldn't be a real good mix. I've raised many, many animals, so I just, everybody kind of in their heart somewhere can find a place for baby animals.
Sure.
It's the bigger animals, and like maybe a serval or I can't think of different ones right off the bat here, but there are so many different kinds of animals that need to be conserved and bred, even if it's in captivity, so that the world can see these animals in a different light. Do we want to take questions at this point?
I put this up there because I had to burp. So there you go.
Oh, well, no problem.
Yeah.
More room out than in.
Exactly. So Jeff Lowe was the one that actually took over the zoo. That's why I'm asking you about Jeff. He took over for Joe. So what are your feelings about that?
I think Jeff Lowe hoodooed Joe and took advantage of him when he was at a low point. I don't think anyone is going to be as good to his cats as Joe would have. And he would, I'm serious, he would play with them. He would go in with the biggest cat he had, and they were just like babies to him, and he would baby talk to them, and they loved it. You could tell. I don't think Jeff Lowe will ever be able to duplicate that kind of a relationship with Joe's babies. Maybe he can breed some more of his own. I don't know. But the zoo, to me, lost all of its magic when Travis died. The zoo may come back someday. It may be just as good, if not better. But to me, it'll never be the same.
Have you heard from, are you in touch with any of the employees that are still currently working at the zoo? No.
No. There were a couple of girls that worked in the office that I probably should have stayed in touch with, but when you move out of state, it's just a whole different ballgame. And now my mother keeps up with all the articles, and she sends them to me from the Oklahoma paper. So I keep up, but I just don't uh, I'm such a different type of person than those people were.
Hmm.
You know, I'm very quiet and very secluded generally. And my husband and I live so far out, you know, you have to leave the gravel road.
Right. So Lori wanted me to tell you before I forget. Lori Dry is the one that actually started this Facebook page up, and she wanted to thank you a million times for coming on and doing this interview with us. We really, really appreciate it. You know, taking the time out of your day to come on here and talk to us.
Well, it was a privilege, and you know, I don't think anybody was telling the side of Joe that I knew. My son was on a site, and I guess Lori Dry's site. Uh, anyway, he told people that's my mom when they were talking about the Here Kitty Kitty lady, and I enjoyed doing the video. I really enjoyed being around Joe and at the zoo, and I think that Joe needs to have a reduced sentence. I really do. Wanting somebody to be out of the picture when you're grieving, that's a whole big difference than the Joe I knew.
Do you think that I don't know, the authorities basically set him up to for some
Yes.
reason? Like they really stuck it to him. Like but it seems like he was kind of a pillar of the community, in a way that he brought a lot of happiness with the zoo. And you know, now that this Netflix series is out, from what I understand, the zoo's as popular as ever. And it's basically Joe's doing, even though he's not getting any credit for it. Jeff is now basically taking the credit for the zoo, but in a way, it's really Joe that brought.
Oh, definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. The whole premise of the zoo was Joe. You know, he had a big, huge pet store down in Texas. Him and his brother, before his brother's passing, and you know that's why it was called the GW Zoo. His brother, you know, that was killed in a drunk driving accident.
Right.
He was like Joe's best friend in the whole world. And when Gerald Wayne died, um, Joe wanted to do something to honor him. And that's how the zoo began.
So one of the things that people want you to realize, and I don't know if you realize this, before the Netflix series, your Hey Kitty Kitty video had 16,000 views. Okay, that's a lot
Wow.
of views. Do you know
Yes.
how many views that you've had now on your Hey Kitty Kitty video?
Have no idea.
8.7 million.
Oh my God.
8.7 million people have watched your Hey Kitty Kitty video with you in that video.
Well, that's a lot for kind of a shy girl, I guess.
And somebody just let me know, Carrie Sue, Lauren let me know that The Offspring, which is a 90s alternative band, they're still rocking, had actually did a cover of your Hey Kitty Kitty video song.
Oh my gosh. Well, that's really flattering. I was hoping that I would get to help, you know, with maybe the production or something of the new video the new docuseries that's coming out or whatever it is with Nick Cage in it.
Yep.
I think he's a great character actor. I think he'll do a great job. But I'd like to talk to him just to let him know my side of Joe, you know, what I saw. Because I met a really nice guy. And I didn't know anything about any of his past or anything. I just took him at face value.
Yep.
And what I experienced was so much fun, and it was the very, very best of Joe, I think.
So that's good to know. So if anybody out there knows Nick Cage, go ahead and shoot him a message and let him know that he needs to talk to Bobbie, because she has the inside track with Joe. One of the things that we learned about Joe in the documentary is that, you know, he went through a very dark period of time where he had actually thought about driving his car off the cliff, because when his family figured out that he was gay, that they were kind of upset by that a little bit, and that didn't sit right with them. What do you know
Well,
about that? Because I know he loved his parents a lot, and he was very
oh
upset
my gosh,
when
very,
Carol.
very
Yep,
dedicated to them.
yep, and when
His
Carol.
father, his father wanted a boy, you know, like most fathers do. And when he found out that he enjoyed men,
Hmm.
of course, that was very hard for a man who had been brought up in the Depression era, you know, that type of lifestyle. It was just really hard for him to find his son in that situation. And he knew, I'm sure his parents both knew, that it was going to be an extremely hard life for him. And it was. I mean, you didn't know this, but Joe had such callus on his fingers and on his hands. It was just amazing that he could be that tender. You know, I mean, my father worked with his hands, and Joe's hands were even rougher. You know, my father worked in the oil fields and drove a bulldozer, and, you know, he was always working with his hands. But Joe, I honestly think, put so much effort into taking care of everybody else. I think he kind of neglected himself sometimes.
Hmm.
I think the hair and everything was part of a character that he created.
I think so too. But
Uh,
I will say this, Bobbie. Gay, straight or not, I do think that Joe was a man's man. I mean, regardless of what he preferred, on that side of things. I mean, he liked to carry a gun. He liked to go in there and wrestle around with tigers. I mean, what's more manly than that? It doesn't matter.
well, it wasn't the wrestling with tigers that was so impressive. It was really how tender he could be, you
Yeah.
know. And I think maybe gay men have a little bit more insight into being tender than, you know, the guys who are raised as boys, you know, and they're taught not to cry and not to be tender and all this. You know, I didn't raise my sons to be uh, stoic.
Hmm.
You know, if you cry, you cry, and
That's
it's
right.
good for you. It's cathartic, and um,
My son's
there's a,
nails, my son's nails are painted right now because his sister
you know, hey,
his sister got.
well, my sons I used to be a nail technician, and my
Okay.
sons used to let me, you know, practice on them, and my husband too. So yeah, that there's nothing wrong with that at all. And you know, if you want to wear women's underwear, I don't care. You know, it doesn't matter to me. Uh, you
And Joe
know, I
had some
mean,
good underwear. Joe had some underwear for sale. I need to get a pair of them thongs, the leopard print ones.
yeah, well,
I'll wear them.
yeah, he kind of took it to the ultimate conclusion and had thongs and condoms and
Yeah.
all sorts of stuff. I mean, anything he could sell to make money for that zoo, that was important. You know, any kind of merchandising that he could keep the zoo going through the winter, especially. You know, that was always a really tough time.
Well, what else do you have to leave us with? So if you had to leave, let's finish up the interview here and say if you have like a final thought on where you'd like to see the zoo go, what you'd like to see Carol, like would you like to see Carol investigated, and what would you,
Absolutely.
so you think there's something with Carol there that needs to be looked into?
I think she had paid off some people, and I really believe that she knows more than she's letting on. I believe that there was something going on. Poor Don, I cannot imagine if he was as happy as he pretended to be, and you know what I've seen of him, uh, that he would have wanted to leave. You
Yeah.
know, a wealthy man wanting to just disappear. No, I don't buy it. I
I
never
don't
will.
I don't buy it
I
either.
think that Joe had the right idea.
So the video that you were in, real
Well,
quick.
thank you so much, Keith, for the interview.
Yep. I did forget to ask you
Oh,
this.
wait a minute. You're breaking up real bad.
Okay. I did forget to ask you this. Can you hear me now?
I didn't get that.
All right. Can you let me
What
know when
did,
you can hear me?
well, I can hear you, but it's just every now and then you go twangy.
Okay. So the whole point of the music video, Here Kitty Kitty, is that Carol feeding Dawn to the tigers?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
I didn't know that at the time. I didn't understand the whole premise. And like I said, I've never met Carol. I don't know who she is or what she had in mind. All I know is what I've been told and the little bit I've seen of her on her video or on her site. And, something's not right there. And Joe was right about, something's wrong here. He says that in the song.
Yep.
Something is definitely wrong. Carol needs to be investigated thoroughly by a group that's further away than just the state of Florida. It needs to be national, and FBI, something. I don't know. CIA maybe, but Don didn't just disappear. I will never believe that. He loved Carol. He, at least it seemed that way. I can't imagine him disappearing like that. And I don't know about this Howard Baskin. I don't know if he's involved or not. But they say that Carol makes about $5 million a year in donations. How can you turn around and donate the donations to other places at the tune of $1.5 million? It's a write-off. It's for your tax purposes.
Yep.
Something that whole thing is corny. Definitely not on the up and up.
I agree. Well, Bobbie, I want to thank you very much for your time. You were great. Really appreciate you coming on here and talking to us, and taking an hour and 6 minutes out of your day here to talk. It was a pleasure meeting you, and we all appreciate it. Thank you very much.
I appreciate coming on. Thank you, Keith.
Yep. It was nice talking to you. Have a good night.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.